Welcome everybody. Today is day 3 of our sci-fi research symposium. Day 3 of 3, so thank you for people who have been here consistently, and if you're new, also welcome. The way this is going to work is it's a panel format, so we have Courtney Cabell, who graciously offered to be here, as well as Sarah Weber, who graciously offered to be here, and obviously Dr. Callan, who graciously decided to be here.
He's been voluntold.
Yeah. So today, we're going to be focusing on the defense process, what to do with your research afterwards, and then how to deal with the edits from the dissertation editor. So this is a panel format. So we're going to kick off with some questions for our panelists. And then if we kind of get to a point where there's a lull in the conversation and you have a question, please jump in. And if you don't, I have a bunch of questions that we can kind of facilitate the conversation with. So that being said, should we do introductions? Or no, I already did that. Okay. So I guess maybe we can, maybe a little bit of an introduction of where you're both at in the dissertation process, and if you're done, kind of what that looks like. I don't know. Whoever wants to start.
Bended and binded, baby. It was just a floating focus on Friday. I did very little else, but internship. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I could see it. I could see all of the things I did. Exciting. So yes, mine is defended and uploaded to ProQuest and published, and I'm waiting to receive my bounded copies.
Mine is defended and published in ProQuest as well. I've received my binded copies. Beautiful. Got a gold foil print on it and big black books.
What was the defense process like for you? Like maybe we can start with like leading up to defense.
Like between proposal and defense, is that what you're asking?
I'm asking, yeah, I guess we can start with, so our last session was focused on proposal, and kind of what that process is like. So once you've gotten your data, you've completed your data collection, what then? What happens next?
And analyzing, I did quote coding, figuring out things and things like that, and then a lot of writing, and a few rewrites. And yeah, the process after, once I had collected and analyzed all of my data, it went pretty quickly after that, just getting my last 2 chapters written up. That was the easiest part of the whole process to me.
Writing up the chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, and what about the edit? Did you get a lot of edits too, Sarah?
Well, my process, okay, so my process was that before I left for internship over that summer term, I was a smart student who got all of her interviews done for her qualitative study. And if there's nothing else I say today that anybody here doing qual is hearing me say, do your interviews the summer before you go to internship. It was the best mistake I happily tripped into. So when I went to internship and had onboarding, I was very overwhelmed by learning the new AHR. And in my internship, I was actually doing 2 major rotations and a minor rotation. So I was learning 3 jobs at once, which is a little like having 4 classes, but it was very intense. And because of that, I sat on my data. I sat on my interviews. I didn't write. I didn't code. I'm saying this in front of my chair, who already knew all of this, and he would just gently encourage me that it'll happen, you'll do it, it's not a problem. And then at Christmas time, because my family celebrates Christmas, it was the holiday time at the end of December for me. I took 2 weeks off from my internship because I had vacation time I could take. Find an internship you can get vacation time with, it's very important. And I took 2 weeks off, and that's where I spent some of my free time going, okay, time to pull up my big girl stuff and do some stuff. So that's where I started analyzing my data and looking for my individual themes and my group themes and trying to find, I did Reisman's model, trying to find those narrative elements that are called upon there. I did not light a candle and walk around it and then decide that was my model. I went through and tried to find the coding that would make sense and that could be replicated by anybody coming back behind me and saying, Weber did a really good job, let's do that. And then by January 1st, I had my themes and had group and individual themes and had started writing. And because I had done it in such an event, I got burnt out. And again, I went, I'll touch it later. And I'm just being transparent with you that was the process that I went through. And then I had a very solid experience with my chair. And I would say this even if you weren't on the Zoom, but the pressure of him being on the Zoom does feel itself in the room of being like, it's okay to send me an incomplete draft. And I had to come to some professional realizations about my need for perfectionism and about my internal desire to only provide him a product that was already clean. And one of the big things I learned was it's okay to send your chair a work in progress. You can even block out, I haven't written this part yet, don't read this part, skip down 3 paragraphs. They will follow that. They're there to support you. They are there to encourage you. So when we took time at Easter, again, that's a holiday my family celebrates. So I think it was in March, April this year. That's where I tightened things up. And I took a weekend and I just emailed Dr. Callan and I said, all right, I'm doing it. Expect chapter 4 this week. And I sent him chapter 4 and he said, okay, I've got chapter 4, go ahead and work on chapter 5. And I'm like, yes, I will do that. And then I wrote chapter 5 and I was like, that was the easiest chapter, right? Why did I delay that so often? And then I sent it to him and he went, here's 4 back, do these edits on 4. I'm going to read 5. I'll have it back to you in 2 days. 3 days later, he would get me the chapter back. And it became this volleying back and forth. And anything where we had conflict in how we looked at the data was so nice to be able to engage in conversation with my chair, to be able to say, this is why I have it this way. This is why it makes sense when you look at the research. And he said, as long as you can defend it, as long as you can defend it, when you get to that point, as long as you can defend it. Or he would say, I hear you, kiddo, but here's why I think it would be stronger to put it this way. And it engaged us in this dialogue that shifted in ways from teacher, student to colleague. You're doing the same thing, aren't you? Doing the same thing. And that was such a lovely shifting, because there were times now, because I had been in the data, I knew my my participants and I knew my model and my research so much that there were times I would have to say, Dr. Callan, I really appreciate what you're saying, but I know more than you now. I know more about this topic than you do. I said it very appropriately, but ultimately it just shifted things in such a lovely way that he was able to encourage and help shape that development to the point where when he said, okay, it's ready to show your committee, I was like, yes, it is. And anything they have to say back, I'm ready for. So then at his prompting, I sent it to Dr. Bernard, who was my content expert, and Dr. Maher, did I say it right? Cool. Who was my advisor, and they provided me their edits and their feedback. And after 2 volleys, I think, back and forth, Dr. Callan said, okay, let's get ready for defense. So
let me just jump in there. So Sarah's explaining the transition that you go through from proposal to getting ready for defense, is that you are the expert. When we sit down for the defense meeting, you're the expert on this topic. And some of the interactions that she talked about, moving from the traditional student teacher to her being really the expert. And, she's handling my questions and wonderments, and she's defending her position. And that's what we're looking for. So right now, you don't feel like you're ready to defend your position because you're not near the end. But when you're near the end, the transition is that you're becoming a doctoral level psychologist, and now you're the topic expert, and you don't have to defer to the committee, which is what you do in the proposal, that by the defense meeting, you're the expert. And now you could do it differently, but now you're an expert in the area that you have researched. And that's where we want to get you to. And then it ultimately makes you feel like you've arrived and you belong. Probably, right? I mean, you felt like you were the expert in the room, right, Sarah?
At defense,
Well, afterwards, like you know that topic pretty well.
I know that topic very well.
Yeah.
Courtney,
Okay.
was your experience similar?
Mine was a little different, but similar. I was convinced that I was going to defend before going to internship, and I was like killing myself trying to get there. So I had my interviews done before Christmas break of year 3. And then I had my data, I analyzed and coded all of my data before the end of second semester, year 3. And then I wrote my chapter 4, sent it to my chair, got it back a little bit later with only a few edits. And then with those edits, she told me to go ahead and start my chapter 5. So I made those edits, wrote chapter 5. We tossed chapter 5 back and forth a few times. And I was like trying to push to defend in July. But my chair was Dr. Balagi. So like she had stuff going on. People were also trying to propose, and then she ended up taking her leave. So I had to wait until first semester of this year to defend. And it was ready at like mid-October. And then I pushed defense to mid-November so that I could adequately give people who wanted to come time and notification and stuff like that. But yeah, there was definitely some tossing back and forth of chapter 5. And I remember before I even started writing chapter 4, I had sent her my themes. And she's like, your theme titles are too long, so shorten them. And we had a meeting and she kind of helped me tease out what I was trying to say. And then when looking at the data, the feedback she basically gave me was try to incorporate your lens into it more, like make it fit your Black feminist lens. And so just with her giving me that feedback, I did a little bit more research and was able to tease that into like how I was writing all about my theme and how it related to my participants. Yeah.
What a process.
If I could jump in. So one of the things that when you get to that stage is you have to be true to your methodology and your perspective. And so
Can you speak to that a little bit?
well, so Sarah talked about going through a narrative approach, and she's using the Reisman model. So Reisman has 2 steps. It has the thematic review and sort of what they call a structural review. So even before she proposed, she had to decide if she's keeping both of those methods of analysis, or is she going to modify the approach and just use, let's say, thematic. She kept both. So that meant when she got to reviewing those interviews, that she needed to do a 2-step process of what were the themes and what were the structural elements. In other words, how the person said it, how the emotion conveyed that the person said by the way they delivered the material impacted her theme. So you have to, chapter 4 connects back to 3 in terms of you've operationalized your model and now you're analyzing it within the model. And coming up, if it's a qualitative study, then you're coming up with these different themes. One of the practical things I will tell you is some students want to write 6 themes with 3 different sub-themes. And you certainly can do that, but that's a nightmare. Because
I have to disagree with that because I had 7 themes and like 4 of them had sub-themes, multiple sub-themes, and I think it worked out well.
And how many pages was chapter 4?
Well,
Uh-huh.
I did intuitive inquiry, which is a very iterative process, and it's like a very creative and artistic model. So I didn't just present my data in one way, I presented it in 3 ways. So I portrayed the personal arc of each of my co-researchers. And then I presented them as themes, which in intuitive inquiry, it's called the declared, oh my gosh, my brain, declared interpretive lenses. And then I wrote a poem as creative synthesis, because I
Right.
started off in chapter 1 with a poem about in intuitive inquiry. The first process of the dissertation is engaging with a work of art, whether it's literary, music, or something like that, and then reflecting on what that's bringing up and your thoughts and things like that related to your research.
You still, so where we can agree is that you stuck with your model. And you
Mhm, yes.
interpret it via the model, and you found multiple themes and sub-themes, and you have found a way to incorporate that. It just probably took you longer than if you did 5 themes. But that was the model, that it's true to your model. It's true to your method.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the length of, when you first said, like, what is the length of that chapter? You probably got very rich data from being able to identify things that you did, and
Yeah, it's pretty long. I don't remember how many pages. I associated that part. I know that my dissertation is longer than a lot. It's over 200 pages.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about length. It's just about, you want to complete the dissertation. That's the goal. The best dissertation is
The
one
done
that's
dissertation.
You sound like this kid when you say it. So I guess this is just open to the panel. Like, what is something that you did during your dissertation process that made the defense like a little bit more manageable, I suppose?
I kept my PowerPoint from proposal, and even before proposal, I kept my PowerPoint from Disprep 2. And like I made like new slides and different template and everything each time, but I had all of my information from each of those processes. So it wasn't like I was starting over each time. So that when I put together my PowerPoint for the defense, I was able to pull the information from those previous 2. And really at that point, it was just incorporating the data and my findings, because I had already had my chapters 1 through 3 worked down. Yeah.
I did the same thing, because there was no point in reinventing the wheel. If I already had this content, let's just refine that to update to where we're at in this process. Another thing I can say that I experienced, if it's okay for me to share this, is that Courtney called me right before her defense and asked if I would be a guinea pig and watch her do it. And I was like, yes, please. So being able to watch somebody in my cohort do their defense and be able to go, oh, well, I can do that. I can present a PowerPoint. I did that every week. So that's not a big deal. That was really helpful. And then when I got close to mine, I asked my husband to act as me. And I presented to him and said, does that make sense? And he said, most of it. And I went, cool. That is better than I thought I was doing. So practicing it and watching somebody else practice their defense, I think really helped turn down the volume of my nerves for my defense, because of that lived experience, that practical, almost priming for it.
I second that. Dr. Block gave me a time limit, because everyone knows that I struggle with time limits with presentations. And so after I had put it together and I practiced just with myself, I was like 30 minutes over what I was supposed to be. And so I ended up asking, I don't know if you all know Caroline, I asked them, could I practice on them first? Because they had just went through the defense process not too long ago. And so I practiced on them, and they gave me some feedback on things that I could cut. And then I was still too long. And then I asked Sarah, and she gave me some feedback on some things that I could cut. That was probably the hardest part for me, was like really condensing and then still being able to present all of the most important information that I wanted to present.
Agreed.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you correctly, one, keep the stuff from the classes and their proposal, but also leaning on your peers if you need like that cut down time.
Agreed.
And then you're also speaking to, sorry, my mind is drawing blank.
It happens, it's fine. To all of us.
Thank you. Yeah, we're just really speaking to like what this process is and what made it easier. Dr. Callan, do you have anything to add from the faculty side? I mean, you've done this a few times through the whole
Yeah.
process.
So we're not going to give you, the faculty isn't, your dissertation chair is not going to give you the green light unless they think you're ready. And that's the most important part. The second part is, unlike traditional universities, maybe Michigan State or Wayne, the defense, it's probably not the right word. I mean, in traditional sense, you're kind of fighting your way in to join the group, and you're defending your position to other experts and convincing them that, you know, you belong with them. It's sort of the notion of a defense. But really, I think most people here at MSP look at it as your first professional presentation. Now, there may be some questions about your conclusions, or there could be some debate during the defense, but one of the ways that we minimize that is by getting feedback prior. You send your dissertation, and usually your advisor and chair give you feedback before you go to the meeting. So if they have questions, you know going in what their areas of concerns are, so you can prepare for that response. And if you have enough time, you know, what my students do is send an amended copy back to the chair, back to the advisor and consultant with highlighted areas saying, I changed this stuff, is this acceptable? So again, that minimizes the opportunity for being put on the spot. So I guess I would say that it's more of a presentation than it is a interrogation.
Can I add something to that, Dr. Callan?
Please.
So by the time you get to defense, you know your information inside and out. So when and if there is a question, you're usually prepared for it. For example, one of the things that happened after I had finished defense, we were in the discussion part of my defense, was my content expert asked about the implications of how this all plays out in countries other than America. And I was so grateful to her for asking me that question, because I wasn't able to go into depth on that in my PowerPoint or in my presentation. However, I had interviewed as one of my subjects a person who was an immigrant, which had led me down to research how women are treated in the perinatal experience in other cultures. So I was very quickly and able to answer that question, because I had done the work of the research and the literature, and after interviewing my person and bringing forward the themes that they individually brought forward, led me back into the research to pull it back forward. So even though it wasn't in my defense formally, I was able to defend and be able to put forward my information on that, because I was the expert on that content in the room. And in some ways, I almost feel like my committee was trying to set me up to look good, which isn't hard. But they ended up asking me these questions, because I did know my stuff. It was right there and I was ready for it. So that was what I wanted to add.
I'll add to what both of them have said as well. So, my brain, I'm blanking. I think I might have lost it.
It's okay, it happens all the time. All of us. Being able to defend, knowing your stuff better than anybody else. You were in the research. Somewhere in that neighborhood, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can cut back to it.
Were you asked questions after you went?
I was. Actually,
There you go.
one of the questions I was asked was about, I had mentioned how Black women find empowerment by being able to tell their stories and things like that. And I was so grateful and appreciative of having practiced with you, because when I got a question related to that, I said, it's actually when I was practicing on Sarah, and presented that part of the theme, she had mentioned like, my dissertation is giving Black women the opportunity to share their stories, and giving them the opportunity to find empowerment. And so, yeah, them just asking, some of the questions I got were specifically related to my themes and my research and things that I had said, and then asking me basically to like repeat it, but in a different way. And it's like go in depth. And I remember the other thing now. Dr. Callan was mentioning how they set you up for success and don't let you go to defense unless you're ready. And then once your chair approves everything and you send it to your advisor and external consultant, sometimes they give you feedback ahead of time. My external consultant didn't, but my advisor sent me her feedback like literally 2 days before defense. It was only one like minor thing that she suggested I change, but then like she had this big question about, I had said it was about a whole theme and saying that she wasn't sure if my theme fit. And I'm like, wait, what? I had said that Black women experience internalized oppression related to religion because of their experiences of indirect exposure to police brutality against Black Americans. Like they suppress parts of themselves. They feel suppressed by their religion, and like, how does God let things happen like this and things like that. And so her saying she wasn't sure if that was true and asked me to clarify. And so I ended up incorporating that into my presentation last minute, just to be able to explain like my perception of what they were saying and how this fit as a thing. And then when they were giving me feedback, she thanked me for incorporating that and said that how I explained it made a lot of sense. Yeah.
Wow.
What a lot of work we both have put in to like get to this point of is binded, but like the process of getting to the point of finding. And we were talking about the edits of like leading up into the defense process and working with those edits. What was it like after? So it's maybe I'm not.
I think it's a good point for me to jump in here,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah, we're so talking about like the edits from the dissertation.
Yes, post
Yeah,
defense.
post-defense.
Yeah.
From
So
the dissertation editor.
I think sometimes the post defense feels like a black box to students of, I defended, now what? So that's part of the reason I'm here to speak to that part, as well as I know Courtney, you're working on converting yours into a publication, and that's another area that in my role I could help potentially guide you. But after your defense meeting, you literally get an email from me that says, congratulations on your defense passing. I'm so amazingly proud of you. And here's your next steps. So once you finish your defense meeting, you have, in theory, 2 weeks to take whatever feedback you received from your committee and complete those particular edits on your dissertation. Once you've completed addressing your committee's feedback, it turns into the now complete editing process that focuses more on the formatting. So that's where the dissertation editor role comes in, and that is still Jana Tompkins, at least for the foreseeable future. We hope Jana will be here for many, many years, but that's up to her. But I'll share in Zoom and for the room what that looks like from that perspective. So once you're post-defense, you really are mostly on your own. There might be some clarifying questions that you work with your committee about, but it is working primarily on that final, like making it pretty stage. So what happens during then, and you all can speak to your experience of that, but really the formatting is looking at all the nitty-gritty details that even if we're encouraging you, even as early as Dis Prep 1, to start using the dissertation template and getting all those formats in, by the time you get to defense, it still is not anywhere near what the final product will look like from that formatting perspective. So Jana, from her perspective, is looking at everything from the headings to the font sizes, the citations, both in text and references, are they matching? Looking at like clarifying
things that maybe don't quite line up with maybe what you say in the text versus what you're showing in a figure. If your figures are formatted to APA, like are your appendices in place? All of those things are really the things that she is looking at with a fine tooth comb. So it was amazing to me last year when she presented to the faculty that on average, she has 1,200 to 1,500 edits / comments on every dissertation post-defense. So this is not the small process. It is quite a long process. But I just wanted you to know, like, that's what it looks like. I don't want it to be a black box because it shouldn't be at all. But once you get through that process, you may have a meeting with her. You may have some back and forth a few different times, but by the end of it, your dissertation is what you want to be putting into ProQuest finally to be available to the world. So that's kind of just the overview of what that process looks like. So I'll invite Sarah and Courtney to talk about their experiences of that process.
I'm interested to know, and please speak to your experience, but I'm also interested to know, like, how do you manage 1,400 edits or 1,200 edits? Like, what is that mental space you have to be in? What does your laptop and desk look like?
Mine wasn't quite that extensive. I went through the formatting checklist before I went to defense. So like majority of that was already done. Before going to defense, I had printed out my reference page, and then was using the control find function and searching everything I had in my reference list in my, to make sure it was in my in-text citation. And then I also did the reverse. I went through the whole document to make sure that anything that was in text had a reference on my reference page. I think I may have missed like 3 that Jana found that were still on my reference page, but not in text. Other than that, it was just like small formatting. So like my tables, she adjusted a little bit to make them conform more to APA. And then my in-text citations themselves, she went through, and I didn't even know this was a thing, but for certain citations, you put the author's first initial in it in the in-text citation. And so she said that there wasn't much else in the document, wasn't a lot for her to change, so she took the time to like give it that extra
She does
boost.
do that. Every once in a while, she'll be like, I'll do the first 3 for you. So I had a lot more. So I don't have any bad memories of post-defense edits from my committee because I passed dissertation with no edits, with past defense with no edits. So that process went great. And then I had it sent to Stephanie and Jana, and it was not, if I missed something, I missed it. If it wasn't APA formatting, Jana caught it. And she's so lovely that she read it for content as well. And if there was a sentence that was confusing to the reader, she said, can you try and refine this? It's a little confusing to me. And then I would be like, okay, Jana, I can do that for you. And then I would go through and fix it and send it back. And then she would come back and go, great, I found 2 more things. And here's another sentence. Think you can work your magic on that one? And I'm like, for anybody else, no. For you, all right, let's do 1 more hit at that. I think I volleyed back with Jana 3 or 4 times over a weekend. And when I first got it back, I'm not gonna lie, I sent Dr. Callan a text and I was like, Jaden, I thought I was done with this. How come I have to do this? Never mind, I'll do it. I'll do the things. It's all gonna make it better. And he came back and said, she's making it bulletproof for you. Paraphrasing slightly, but that's essentially what I took as the message. I was like, okay. And then I spent that weekend getting it tight for her because she was giving up time, I think the Friday before Memorial Day. And I was like, oh my gosh, she has a son, she has a life, she has music she loves, and here she is putting in time to try and make this bulletproof for me. I'm gonna offer the same dignity and respect. So over that weekend, I got through all of the edits. I think it was Monday or Tuesday was our last volley, and she said, looks good. And I just was so grateful that I took time to email her and just thank her so much for her extra time, effort, her meticulous nature, and how she made my dissertation bulletproof to go out to ProQuest. So when I approached it with a spirit of like gratitude, that's really what it was. And to answer your question about what did my desktop look like, I just kept saving Janice me with the next date, and then the next date, and then the next date, and whatever the newest date was, that was the version I was working on. And then the name of it changes when you put it into ProQuest anyway, so that's more of a record management issue, but not terrible because it's only 4 volumes.
Can I just add to that too? Because I saw some of the looks on the faces in here when you said 1,200 to 1,500. A lot of it is they're minor where you're accept, like, and it's done and it's fixed. So it's not like you're reworking every single sentence in here.
She makes a lot of the edits in there for you, and she does it in suggestion mode, so you can accept it and stuff like that.
I just want to scare you.
You hear me.
I don't think I had that many in mind, but everything that was in mine wasn't content. It was, you missed a period, you double space, because I'm a learner of a certain age, so I double space after sentences. Such an easy fix, I never remember to do it. They weren't, you're gonna be grinding over this for the next 3 weeks again. They were, sit down, accept the changes, rework 3 sentences, 2 and then 1, and own that you missed that Sue and Sue is in your stuff and it's not in your reference list. She often looks up the citation for you. It's so supportive. It truly is. So even though it's voluminous for her, it's supportive for us, as I experienced it.
Same, yeah. And I remember, one of the, poems that I had gotten copyright permission. But she asked me to reach out to the publisher, just to get clarification that it was okay for that to be published in ProQuest, because the permissions they gave me said it couldn't be published in like a academic journal and things like that.
Dr. Callan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so this isn't a perfunctory or non-important activity. You don't actually get your diploma until it's, I'm gonna ask Stephanie to verify. You don't get your diploma, isn't released until it's published to ProQuest.
Correct.
So, you know, we have a few students that are 9 months out of graduation, but they haven't finished up the JANA edits because that means it hasn't been posted to ProQuest. And the implication for them is they can't collect postdoc hours for that 2,000 hours because technically they don't have a degree until it hits ProQuest. So it's not a perfunctory activity. It's like it's the linchpin that gets you to graduate. So it has meaning.
He said it, that's just get them done quickly, because again, the sooner you pass the EPPP, if you haven't already, you still need those 2,000 hours. So it's, if you're out there working for 9 months to not be able to count those hours, it delays everything that you've been working towards. So yeah, I'm glad Dr. Callan brought that up.
Yeah.
How do you find out when it's uploaded? Do you get like an email, and then what was that experience like to get that notification, and then got the physical copy? What was it like to like?
She's so exciting. I smelled it. I was hugging it. I tried to take pictures of these people.
Yeah.
I have a photo shoot scheduled with mine.
I left mine at home when I was taking my pictures. I was so excited.
It's all good. I'm gonna put it in like a baby blanket.
Labor of love.
Okay, so we've talked about like the lead up into defense and then like the defense process, the edits after. And I know at the beginning we mentioned that you're working on a publication for your dissertation. What does that look like? How did you decide to publish?
Another labor of love. You gotta cut down 200 pages to 14, including your references and abstract. it was hard for me, to cut. But I ended up chopping out major parts. I had it down to like maybe, actually, I submitted it to, the Journal of Black Psychology, and if it's like a first publication, they allow, I think, it's either 35 or 45 pages. And when I read that, I got excited, and I didn't realize that it included your reference pages. And when I shortened my dissertation down, I got it down to 45 pages, and I still had like 10, 11 pages of references. And I'm like, there's nothing else that I can cut. So I ended up sending it to a colleague of mine, and he looked it over, told me, get rid of all of that stuff from your methods. You don't need all of that. Like, put the very bare minimum. And that helped me cut out like another maybe 7, 8 pages. And then I went through, and everywhere where I had in-text citations where I had multiple authors, I just selected one author to keep, to cut that part down, and then went through my references and was getting rid of the ones that I was able to get rid of through my in-text citation. And I finally got it down to the maximum page length. It was very hard. Now I'm waiting to hear back from them.
Okay.
I submitted it, what month is this?
June.
I think I submitted it at the beginning of last month. I also plan on getting multiple publications out of it. So I've talked to a couple different people about ways to break it up, to be able to submit it multiple places.
Yeah, I can imagine condensing 200 into even 45 is a big ask for sure.
For those of you that have attended some of the publication group sessions, we talk a little bit about this at the very end of ways to publish. And there are resources out there that kind of help think about that navigation process of how do you take this huge piece of work and condense it. I think Dr. Bloggy is another example to think about, because she took her dissertation and she pulled out and made it into 3 different articles, because there were enough pieces of it that could be distinctly like written about. The method's the same, but the results, you could focus on one piece of the results in one study and another piece of it in the second study. And so that's always a possibility too, of one way to think about how to break it apart. And I know it seems like an overwhelming process, but one of the things to think about is your dissertation, while it is out there for the world to see, it's not formally published yet. It's considered still an unpublished like manuscript in some ways, but like not peer reviewed. Like it's out there, but it's not to the next step. So this is taking it to the next step. I put some examples of students that have published their dissertation, and hope to quickly add yours very soon when you hear more. But these are just some examples in the last few years of students that have taken their dissertation and published it into a professional journal. And you can see it really is diverse in terms of the types of journals that they select. And those would all have different requirements in terms of how much space can you have in terms of the length or the word count or the number of references or the number of tables. And so that's a process that we, the library, can help you think through too, of what am I looking for in a journal, and what are kind of the things, like who is my audience? Who do I want to read this? So we can help you kind of navigate creating that journal shortlist and thinking about who you want that to be. And it may be not getting to publication, but maybe you want to present it. There are actually several students that I've seen present after Disprep 2, and they'll present, mostly the literature review piece that you write in Disprep 1, but as a starting place, because you put all that work into it. And then you can potentially present that at a conference to talk about the lit review part. And then I've also seen students, once they're completed with their dissertation, you just presented at Division 32 this year for your dissertation, as an example. I saw one of our graduates from the previous 2 years ago, Michael Valente. He did a textual analysis of Kierkegaard, and it was like a almost 400-page dissertation. He presented it at Division 32. the following year after he completed the dissertation. So you don't have to do that within the confines of your program. You can graduate and still continue to do this after graduation as you start to go into your practice. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to share as you start thinking through. Do you want to do this, and what ways could you potentially do it? But it is possible to do and very doable for anyone who really wants to do it.
Yeah, as you were speaking, Stephanie, I was wondering, like, who is a part of the publication? Because you're working on your dissertation in a committee. And so when you decide to publish, is it kind of a you thing and your committee takes a step back?
Oh, Dr. Kim.
Well, typically you include the committee because they've been giving you feedback and review, and you might choose either your chair or whoever you were working more closely with to maybe help you take it from X pages down to 20 or so. But usually you involve the committee with that unless there's, unless somebody didn't participate much in the process. But so you've put in you probably put a couple of 100 hours into the dissertation, and certainly you want to be done. Another 10 to 20 hours, and you now get a publication. And even if you're not thinking about doing something academically, another 20 hours gets you out into the professional world, as Stephanie says, beyond the ProQuest, but into the journals that everybody reads. It's very nice to see your name in a journal that you've labored over. And it's probably, again, another 10 to 20 hours worth of work to condense it. So it's like you're right here on the ground. So now you have to go back up to, 10,000 feet and summarize it to be able to send it out. And in some cases, you can get multiple articles. I think Sarah, for example, could easily have 2 articles if she so chooses. So.
Thank you, Dr. Callan.
Not that you ever heard that from me or anything.
Appreciate you, and yes, I have looked into the type of journals that would accept my work on the EPDS and on the racial and systemic pieces that we discovered. And I am not forgetting. And part of me here is accountability.
I know.
We're knowing that was going to be a part of the conversation.
But the reality is most students, 95% of them probably, I'm guessing, but it's a high number, don't take the extra 20 hours. Just another 10 to 20 hours and you've added, and it also looks good for the school that you've, because you're announcing your affiliation when you put your name up there. So it has a benefit to the school to have more publications coming out of the school. So there's another 10 to 20 hours and everybody wins.
For me, when I got to the point where I was ready, like preparing it and ready to submit it and everything, I had asked Dr. Balagi, should I include the whole committee? And she said, ask them if they want. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Buzzles was my advisor. She wanted to be included, but my external consultant said she didn't feel like she had put in enough work or anything like that. So it was just my chair and advisor included when I submitted it. And then when I was paring it down, I ended up texting Dr. Balagi, like, I feel like I'm ripping my soul apart as I'm trying to cut. And she's like, yeah, it's like, it feels like that, but just keep going. And then she told me to send it to her when I was done, and she reviewed it and was like, go ahead and submit.
I think one of the things I'm noticing is a theme from Dr. Callan. Can I call you Dr. Cabell? Courtney and myself, is that the relationship you build with your chair is such a unique and special one that goes beyond this one document. They become a cheerleader in your corner. They become a mentor for not only this document, but your professional development. And this is not, the completion of your dissertation is not the end of that relationship. At least it won't be for me.
It won't be for me either. And yeah, I was talking to someone who, when I was paring it down, who had read it, and he had said I could probably get a publication out of each of my themes. Like there's enough rich data that I could put each thing into its own paper. So I do plan on doing that. Just, I gotta find the time.
Yeah. In your spare time.
Right, and all my.
that was kind of my next question, like, how do you decide what pieces to publish? You've worked on this for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and it becomes like your baby, right? So like, what pieces do you decide?
I'm not deciding, I'm publishing it all.
I think that for me, one of the things that drives that is what is still making me curious after it's all done. Like when you work with, my dissertation had a lot to do with perinatal care for women who had, how they were treated by their OBGYNs. And when you are treated by your OBGYN, they use a screening tool called the Edinburgh postnatal screening tool. And through my interviews, I found out that mothers were lying on it, that they were saying they were fine when they weren't, and that they felt like it was very perfunctory, like it was just a checklist of things and that nobody actually cared about the answers. So why did they care enough to be vulnerable in those spaces? And that makes me continue to be curious and to want to see advocacy done and to see better use of a tool if we're going to use one, and a return to care in that relationship between physician and patient, rather than just keeping the attorneys happy in their condos. We want to make sure that care when provided for women in an ultimately vulnerable situation is attuned, not a checklist. And I think that when I look at some of the research that we experienced by interviewing the women, there are things that need to be brought to light in the research and the literature so that it can form practice. So this is one piece in particular. I had mothers who were experiencing emergency C-sections and extreme medical emergencies afterwards, and had babies in NICUs. And they're getting this EPDS, which one of the things that screens whether you have depression or not is, have you found yourself avoiding touch with your baby? Well, yeah, they're in an incubator, but you have to check yes. That doesn't accurately reflect whether this is post natal depression, or if this is actually an acute stress response to a very traumatic example of a medical emergency. And I think we need more clarity and more training, and we need more physicians in the early parts of their careers getting more support with how do you give good chairside bedside manner where you're actually giving attuned care. So that is what's going to drive me back to my dissertation, to look for those nuggets of what still makes me feel curious. What, after all of this, do I still feel like there are unanswered questions, and what is my responsibility as a researcher, as a psychologist, and as an expert in this content to bring to light.
Thank you. We're almost at time here, but I guess one of my last inquiries, and maybe for myself as well in the future, like, what's one thing that you're proud of from this dissertation, the process of the dissertation, now that you're on the other side of her?
That's a hard question. I'm proud to be done.
Yeah.
I'm proud that I passed with distinction. Like, that was my goal. Like, this is my baby. I originally intended on doing mixed methods, but all faculties kept telling me that the best dissertation is the done dissertation. And so I broke my question into 2 and focused on the qualitative portion for my dissertation. And I started an independent research project to get quant data, which I'm glad I did it that way, because getting quant data, ironically, is so much harder than qualitative. Like, I can easily get people to sit down with me for an hour to an hour and a half to share their story with me. But getting people to take 10 minutes to fill out a survey, like, it's hard. And then when you have a narrow population, that makes it even harder. But so, yeah, I'm proud of passing with distinction and just the labor that I poured into it, and even continuing the research outside of dissertation.
I am proud of my mothers and what they survived, and that we're making their pain nap.
I mean,
Should be.
thank you both for sharing your experience and your process up until this point. I'm only halfway through and I have a lot of like, respect for the both of you being able to get to this point in your process, and both of your topics as well. So thank you for being present. Does anybody have any questions or comments from what we discussed today?
You can do this, like, I remember sitting on the other side of this conversation and being like, I don't think I can do this, or "Oh, it's gonna be a lot of work." It will be a lot of work, and it's a lot of work you're capable of. You would not be in this room if you were not up to the task. And is anybody here interested in going for their internship? Side note, is anybody here interested in going to a Veterans Administration for their internship? Fantastic. I'm gonna report back that I spoke to at least one person who's interested. You can do it at a VA. You absolutely can do it at a VA. You can't do your interviews if you're doing qual at a VA during VA time. But as long as the veteran care is completed, you can pull your laptop out and do work on your dissertation in between, or if you have a cancellation, you can absolutely do that. And that's how I'm sitting here today, having defended in April and being able to have it buttoned up that way. You have to be intentional and purposeful with your plan of how you're going to do it. I think that would probably be true of most internship sites, but I haven't been at most internship sites. I was just at a VA. But there are gonna be people who are gonna say it was too hard, I was too busy, I couldn't make time. It is possible to get completed within the structure of your internship year. It does require you to use those things.